Kawasaki Vulcan 800. No start condition. Owner's pretty sure the carburetor is crap on it because it wasn't running well when it was running. So carb kit finally came in. We're going to rebuild that, and I've got some new spark plugs for it because the old ones were a little fouled. So let me walk you through how to disassemble. First off, you'll start by pulling the seat. It's just one bolt at the back, and then you'll pull back on the seat and it'll come off. It hooks onto here and under the tank. I've already undone the bolt holding the tank on, so we're gonna have to pull that to get the carburetor off. But first I wanted to pull the plugs. This back plug you're able to get with a long extension and a spark plug socket down this way. The front spark plug I was able just to reach underneath the tank. Do it that way. If you really want to pull your tank, obviously that would make it easier, but then you got to deal with pulling the tank. So that does work. You don't have to pull the tank to do spark plugs on a Vulcan 800. Here's one of the old spark plugs. Calls for an NGK CR7E. The gap on them is 0.024 to 0.28. As you can see, this one's in good shape, just a little sooty. So for the few dollars that it costs for new plugs, I've got same brand new plugs to put in and a brand new rebuild carburetor kit from Moose Racing. So here's an interesting thought for you guys. Just pulled the second spark plug, or should I say the rear spark plug on this V-twin, and this is it. Camera will focus. It looks basically like new, which makes me kind of think that this cylinder is not firing. To show you again, this was the front one. Front cylinder, good shape but sooty. And then the back cylinder. That could be our problem to not starting all in itself. So I'll look into it and let you know what I find. This spark plug itself does not spark. Tested it a few times in a few different locations and no spark. So I threw in the new plugs, and lo and behold, fires right up. So that solves the no start situation. Not sure if you could tell from the few seconds of idle, but it is super rough, and on initial applications of throttle, the bike's super hesitant. So I'm going to go through the carburetor anyways and clean it up, rebuild it. I've got the parts anyways now, so might as well make the bike run like new. So next step is disconnecting this top speedo and light cluster. Just a bolt here that I already undone, and then you lift it up. There's a electrical connection and that just unplugs, and then the speedo, which is threaded on. It'll be a cable inside, and then this should just come off, and then we'll pull the tank off. So to pull the tank, there's the one bolt down here that I've already undone. Second bolt is under the speedo right here, and then once that's loose, you'll be able to go under here and disconnect vacuum. Oh, I guess I should point the camera in the right spot. Vacuum and the fuel line. Make sure before you do that that the petcock is in anything but prime. Reserve or on both use vacuum to let fuel flow. Prime bypasses that, so fuel will flow no matter what. So don't make a mess, don't have it on prime. I'm going to leave it on. If your bike has an option of off, even better, use off. Most case, if that's the situation, it'll have to be off because you won't have a vacuum line. Okay, here we are with the tank off. You can see the carburetor right down in here. So now to get to it, take off the cover for the air filter, just the one bolt here, and then we'll pull the air filter and backing plate. Probably just a couple hoses and a mount and a couple cables for the carburetor, and it'll all come off. Okay, and behind the air cleaner there was 2 bolts that hold the backing plate on, and then you just simply pull this out of the top box. But in behind, see if you can see, down in there, there's three hoses. So we'll pull those off. Okay, next up I'm going to undo these 2 bolts to remove the bracket which holds the carburetor in place. Just to gain a little more access to the top, I decided to pull this air box, more like just an inlet off, just 2 bolts. That'll come off and allowing more access to the top here. Okay, here we are. Now all that's left is to disconnect a overflow. There's a vacuum which runs to the petcock and somewhere else. There's also the choke, which is a little plastic threaded nut down in there, and your 2 throttle cables. And then and also the fuel line. And then the carburetor should come out. Okay, we got the carburetor of the bike. I always start with a quick, dirty clean of the outside of it. Just give it a little brush with some brake clean or Earl Spirits or something in a bucket. As you can see, this one was pretty filthy. But quick little clean, because the more you can clean it now, the less chance that that grime gets inside. Because we want inside spotless. So I like to start with the top. Those 4 screws you see there. And we'll take that cover off. There'll be a spring inside, so watch out. Okay, trying out a new idea. I'm using that suction cup stand that you might have seen from a previous video that I use in the car on my workbench. So far so good. Hopefully you guys can see alright. Should work out. So let's undo these 4 screws here. I always try and keep everything super organized. That way there's no chance of forgetting how it goes back together. Especially if this is the first carburetor you've taken apart. Like I said, there's a spring inside, so you've been warned. Here we go, there's the lid and the spring. Diaphragm, be super careful with the diaphragm. My rebuild kit did not come with a new one, and once it's torn, it's garbage. So sometimes they need a little coaxing. This one looks like it's gonna pretty much fall out, which is a bonus. And then inside, here's your needle. Little keeper for the needle. Yep, and just as anticipated, everything is filthy. Here's down inside the top, a little grimy in there. Nothing left to take apart there. Next up will be the bottom float bowl. There's a, what do you call it, accelerator pump in here, but I'm pretty sure most kits anyways don't come with parts to rebuild the accelerator pump. So I tend to just leave them. Oh, sorry guys, suction cup failure. I just tend to leave the accelerator pumps alone, or take them apart, clean out the housing, and then put it back together. Again, it's another diaphragm, so be super careful. Mine did not come with a diaphragm for the accelerator pump, but that's okay. So these 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, gets the float bowl off. If you didn't drain the carburetor, this may still be full of gas, so watch out. This one looks like it's a little more intricate than your average carburetor. They've got some linkages on the side that are part of the float bowl. So I'm going to see if this will come off and see where it leads me. So you want to be careful removing the float bowl because there's the float inside and you don't want to damage it. Here we go. Looks like it's just connected to this bottom linkage here, and there's a cotter pin. So I'll just pull out the cotter pin. Yeah, it's utterly disgusting inside. There's, I'll show you in a second. There's actually a puddle of sediment. Well, you get the idea. I'm not going to bore you with me struggling with this for 5 more minutes. Okay, here's the inside, the float bowl. Not sure if you can see how well, it never shows up on camera, but down inside here is actually full of sediment. All that nasty stuff. So if the float bowl's typically full of sediment, then the rest of the carburetor's got it everywhere. So true tale sign of a good cleaning in order. And what cleaner parts can you get? And brand new ones. So new needle, jets, screws, O-rings, gaskets, definitely suggest Carb rebuild kit. This one was like $50 or so. Well worth the money. Okay, so we'll clean out the float bowl, replace this O-ring style gasket. And then on the business end, you got your float, your jet. There'll be another one down inside here. Another one down inside here. So just be careful taking it all apart, as it is just aluminum and brass, but here we go. Here's the one that was down inside this hole. Looks like I did not get a new holder, so I'm gonna have to take this apart. Not a big deal. Get a bigger screwdriver here. Just a wrench and a screwdriver. It's a little easier if you do this part on the carburetor, but hey. So there you go, there's your main jet. Out of the holder. My kit didn't come with the holder, so we'll clean that up. And then to remove the float, it looks like just push this pin through. Okay, my pin was pretty stuck, so it needed a little persuasion of a hammer. Nice, gentle. And I didn't bother hammering it all the way out. Let the float off. There's the little piece there. And my kit came with a new one. Be careful with the metal tang. That's your float level adjustment. So most likely that it's already adjusted properly, so try not to bend that, and then you don't have to readjust it. But I'll show you how to measure float level on installation. A good example, I took off that accelerator pump that I was talking about. Just doing some exploring here off camera, and proved to be a good idea because as fragile as the diaphragm is, it's filthy. So carburetor cleaning, Q-tips are always your friends. Little brake clean. Clean everything up real good, blast it out with air, let it dry, put back together. When you did it with brake clean, obviously it'll eat rubber, so little O-rings and such. My kit came with a new one of these by the looks of it, so beware. There's also another diaphragm on the side of the carburetor here. Looked like that. Just two screws. Careful because there's a big spring on the inside. This guy here. Careful with the diaphragm. And same thing, lots of gross grit, nasty old gas. give everything a good clean up now. That's the carburetor completely disassembled. So it's just a matter of giving it a real good clean now and reinstalling. I will do so off camera, and then you can check back in for how we measure and adjust, if needed, float height. Last tip for installation here, just putting in the jets, and I thought I would mention jet sizes. So carburetor rebuild kits typically come with stock jet sizes. If you're at altitude or you've got mods on your bike and your bike's been rejetted a different size, there's little numbers on these jets. Make sure you're putting in the correct jet and not just going with the new one because it's new. In my case, I've got stock jetting. It's a 135 main and a 48 secondary, so I'm going to go with the new jets. Okay, here we are, float height adjustment. You want to measure from the mating surface of the gasket, which is here, to the top of the float when the needle is just pushing down. So you don't, or just touching rather, not pushing down. So as you can see, if you push down gently, it'll go down further. And if you lift up, it'll go up further. So how I do it is just the carburetor upside down on the table, no pressure on here, measure from mating surface of the gasket to up here on the float. And these carburetors want 16.5 millimeters, and this one's bang on. If you need to adjust a little bit, you would bend this metal tab here ever so gently to either get a larger or smaller distance, thus more or less fuel in the bowl. Just back from a test ride on the Vulcan 800, all back together, runs mint. Couldn't be happier with the results. Ended up being a dead spark plug, so I put new plugs in it and a good carburetor rebuild and tune. Runs like new. Just gonna give it a quick wipe down with a rag and some liquid detailer on it, and let the owner come pick it up at his leisure. Next, we have in the garage, just showed up yesterday, a B-Star 1100. It's in for some front brake work. Stay tuned for that.